Please stand for a silent reflection and pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please, Chair.
Mrs. Cynthia?
Here.
Mr. Diver?
Here.
Mrs. King?
Here.
Mr. Schuler?
Here.
Mr. Tinkin?
Here.
Mr. Vorbach?
Here.
Mayor Mechanica?
Here. Please read the Open Public Meeting Act, Statement of Compliance.
Pursuant to the requirements of New Jersey's Open Public Meetings Act, notice of this meeting was included in our annual meeting notice, which was sent to the Co-Star and Asbury Park Press newspapers, posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and also on the borough's website.
Thank you. Need a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make that motion.
And we need a second.
I'll second.
Any questions?
Wait. This changed agenda?
Yes, and Mrs. Cynthia, the only change is that the white space on the blue sheet was an item that was on the initial agenda that was there in error.
Yeah. Why was it there in error? It was there.
It was carried over from the previous meeting agenda.
Oh, okay. All right.
And that was actually approved at our last meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Cynthia?
Yes.
Mr. Diver?
Yes.
Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin?
Yes.
Mr. Vorbach?
Yes.
No presentations at this time, no scheduled public hearings at this time. At this time, we have the first voice of the public, which you may speak on any agenda item. Yes, just step forward, give your name and address.
Sharon Gatto, Beverly Avenue. Just wondering when the next town meeting would be about the zoning ordinance, and also at which time are we going to possibly hear some alternative plans, because that was something that had been discussed.
We don't have a next scheduled meeting. We don't have a meeting scheduled.
But we were supposed to be having more down the road before anything happens.
We will before anything happens, yes. We don't have a scheduled one, though.
Well, when we do, will we be hearing some alternative plans for the areas? I thought that was going to be part of the whole miasma, that we might look at other things to do besides what is proposed in the draft ordinance. I think we need to think about that.
We really haven't had a discussion about any alternatives.
Well, I think we should. I think it's only fair to the public that we explore that before it's a done deal, and then it's too late if it turns out to be a disaster down the road. So that's it. I hope that keep that in mind and let us know, because Mr. Diver, you said that nothing was going to happen overnight, and we're going to take the proper, let it take its course so that everybody's informed.
There is a procedure as far as that goes. The ordinance hasn't even been introduced. So in that regard, we can have additional discussion, but nothing's been done yet. And in fact, it's probably going to go back to the planning board first before it comes back here to be introduced. So there's plenty of time. And again, nothing is going to happen overnight.
Why would it go back to the planning board? Just educating?
Well, we may have some differences, from listening to the initial discussion at March 11th, which was only 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
We have come back and thought, well, there were certain issues that people raised at that meeting that we wanted to address and maybe remove from this area, so they wouldn't be possible there. And again, that has to go back to the planning board, because then the planning board has to look at it, and then they send it back to us.
And then you'd have another town meeting?
Oh, sure. You could have a town meeting, plus if you introduce the ordinance, you must have a public hearing. That's the law.
Oh, I know that, but in between,
Yeah, I'm sure we can.
because just a lot of people, like for instance, people maybe who weren't there, and if it goes and goes and there's no meeting, maybe they think nothing's happening, and then it goes to the planning board, and then it comes back here, they might need to know if there's changes.
That's why I said at the meeting, please check the planning board agenda. It's the fourth Wednesday of every month. That agenda you should check, and if it's on the agenda, then you should be there. And, be there to, voice your opinion.
Okay.
And then, you should be heard, as far as that goes.
Okay.
But again, there's nothing that's gonna come racing down the pike, and all of a sudden, pass everybody by. I do think everybody up here would agree that the March 11th meeting was an excellent meeting where we received really good feedback.
Definitely, yeah.
And everybody certainly had a chance to participate.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing no hands, I'd like motion to close the first voice of the public.
I'll make that motion.
Second,
I'll second it.
all in favor?
Aye.
Discussion items. Do we have anything we would like to say about the B3 commercial zoning district?
Mayor,
Yes, yes.
Mayor, when we have that second meeting, I'd really like to see before that second meeting that we have some kind of a traffic study done, some kind of environmental study done, so that, we have some information to give the public. I know the public asked about those things, and I think that's where a lot of the, a lot of the concern comes from. So if the governing body could make that happen, I think the next public meeting would be worthwhile, and we'd probably be able to make better decisions if we had more facts.
I agree 100% with Chris, and I also, the engineer's recommendations were that it could also be residential, all residential versus all commercial. And really, I look at Spring Lake. Spring Lake, when I first moved into town, there was a lot more commercial areas in Spring Lake. And they started going all residential. They started making everything residential. So now and I realize this is 71, Highway 71, and that may not be, but is it possible that maybe an age-restricted townhome development could be a nice addition to the town versus, we have 6 bars in town. We have 6 hotels and bars. We've got, 3 pizza places. We've got, I'm looking at the commercial and what exactly is the idea?
7 banks.
Pardon me?
7 banks.
Yeah. I mean, it's the plan and when the nursing home went down, what was that nursing home called? And they made it a very nice townhome development, which didn't add a lot of traffic to the area. So I'm thinking that, should we have other options in front of us to decide whether or not it should be all residential versus all commercial? And so I agree with Chris, we need more information before we go forward.
I agree with Chris as well. I think we need the traffic studies, and that should come through the planning board, through the engineers, for whoever wants to develop this. They should be paying for that, so that we get that information brought back here.
Well, I was going to agree also, but
Well, this is good.
But, no, honestly though, to make a decision with very little information, and then without the ability to listen to the public, because I think, honestly, it's everybody's town, so I think everybody really has a chance to discuss this thoroughly, because it's going to be there for a long time. There's no need to rush into something, that we're going to regret. So a little extra time and a little more information and a little more input, I think, can't hurt.
Yeah, and there's also a question as far as the plans, because of there's 3 properties that are owned by somebody else. So if you have, is there behind the scenes talks to make it all one big owned property? And I mean, I really don't want to see another bar in Spring Lake Heights. I really don't. And
Okay,
Jim?
along those lines, I would like to recommend that we send this back to the planning board with the following changes. They removed the garden supplies.
Can you repeat that? I can't hear you. You moved the what?
The garden supply store. Remove that. Remove the outdoor dining, because there was a lot of complaints about that. And the hardware store, removing that. And when you remove the outdoor dining, all Section F would come out in pertaining to it. Send that back to the planning board and have them start working with that.
Did everyone hear that? Remove garden supply, outdoor dining, and the hardware? Is that it?
Yes.
And if I could, Mayor, if the council should determine to refer the matter back to the planning board for further review and recommendations, that certainly wouldn't preclude the planning board from reviewing the other options that were raised in Mr. May's initial letter, which aren't just limited to all commercial. The planning board can make a recommendation back to council that it be mixed or that it be entirely residential. But perhaps council could refer it back to the planning board and have them take another look at this and come forward with what they believe is the best alternative, all things considered.
Now we have to take a vote on.
To refer it to the planning board, yes.
Before we do that, Chris's point about having more information, we could send this back to the planning board, and that might be a good idea. I'm not saying no, it's a bad idea, but send it back to them and then come back to us. Then we get the information, and then we go, gee whiz, I think we should get the information first, but that's just my opinion.
I think that's kind of putting the cart before the horse, and I really feel that this should go back to the planning board so that the planning board can have the opportunity to also answer the public's questions and have the public come out to a forum at the planning board itself, which they have indicated they have not had a chance to do thus far. And as far as plans, plans don't usually come at this point. As I understand it from talking to people on the planning board, that you find out plans usually after a zoning situation is decided upon, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct, Fred?
Yes, that's been the case in other municipalities that I've been involved with, that an ordinance is drafted that sets forth all the permissible uses as well as the area, yard, and bulk requirements, and then it would be up to a developer to come forward with a plan that matches the zoning that you've set up.
Right.
But in this case, it's a property owner that has brought this to us. So it's a property owner, it's not something we're taking, it's a property owner that is asking us to change the zone. Why? So I completely disagree. When a property owner wants to change the zone for a reason, we should know the reason why they want to have the zone changed.
If it gets sent back to the planning board, I mean, it'd be great if you could assure me that they would definitely have a public meeting and broadcast it around the neighborhood. But
I doubt
we, this is a little unusual. It is really basically one property owner is kind of asking for this. This, if it goes back to the planning board before we get all of our information here, then it kind of limits our role going
exactly
forward. And it may get I guess I'm a minority here, so.
It doesn't matter. Role.
No, it doesn't limit our role, Tom.
Okay,
potentially.
did anyone read the letter to the editor from Ray Miller in the paper that was from the chair of the planning board saying, use my name, even though everybody on this council requested specifications at the meeting last time. But he just referenced me. But anyways, regardless of that fact, if that doesn't tell you where the planning board is already biased and doesn't have the facts and is already biased that this is going to go down as a commercial zone property, if they have anything to do with it.
The planning board doesn't. I mean, they have a review and recommendation, but the ultimate...
They don't even know
council
anything.
makes
They
the
don't even know
determination.
anything they're saying.
But we're answering to the citizens of the town, and I
Exactly.
genuinely appreciated their input, so I would, I'm not going to yell and scream about it. I just don't think we should send it over there until we get all the facts.
And what, Tom, just so we're clear, traffic study is one of the things you would like?
Traffic, environmental, there was noise. And I don't have my notes from the meeting, but there were.
It's going to be really hard to do a study when we don't know what's going in there. But
Well, that's why perhaps it should go to the planning board first to make a recommendation about
Well,
whether it
we
should
need
be
to know what they're
residential
gonna
or
do.
business, and then once a recommendation comes forward, you could have those studies done before you move forward with any ordinance to determine whether it's appropriate or whether it's too aggressive, given the traffic and the noise.
we should make the requirement to the owner, the landowner, that they tell us what they want to do with the property. We should make that requirement. What are your intentions?
Well, from what I understand, the property owner's planner met with the borough planner, and through those meetings is how the list of permitted uses came forward. So clearly they would look to do something that's set forth in the permitted uses. It's not necessary to have a plan and for you to then create a zoning ordinance that matches the plan. That's
Right.
like contract zoning, when someone gives you a contract saying, I want to do this, and you create a zoning to go around the plan that they've given to you. Your responsibility is to create the zoning, and then the developer is required to come forward with a plan that complies with your zoning, and your zoning is supposed to be in accordance with what you deem to be in the best interest of the health, safety, and welfare of the public.
But if in order for us to do that, to create the zoning parameters, we need all the facts. I mean,
Yeah, but that's gonna come back to us.
It's
You
gonna
don't
be-
have to
so
give
we
the
may go
developer
back
what
and
they're
forth with
looking to
planning board in
create.
multiple iterations, and that's okay with everybody up here?
It's fine with me until we get it right.
You're supposed to determine what's in the best interest of the borough
Yeah, I'm okay
for
with
that property, not what they want to put there. What you're saying is you want them to give you what they want to put there, and then you might
No,
create
what I'm saying
zoning.
is I want the various pieces of information that we asked for. The traffic study, I think it was rainwater runoff came off, noise, and things like that.
Environmental
Parking, whatever, environmental stuff, whatever that list was that we had, so that we can create an ordinance. I'm not trying to create an ordinance for the benefit of the one person. As a matter of fact, it's completely the opposite of what I want to do.
Is there any way we can make a motion for something like this?
Well, we did. Didn't we last time vote that we wanted that information?
Do we make a motion?
I think the attorneys talk to us about process right now.
Right.
So we can get all those things, but it sounds like the process is let the planning board make a recommendation.
Correct.
Is that what you're saying,
That's
Council?
what I'm suggesting, yes.
All right, so the planning board makes a recommendation, nothing can be done with that recommendation, just a recommendation that comes back to us.
Correct.
And
Simply a
then-
recommendation.
Right, and then, based on that recommendation, so if they recommend B3, or they recommend, whatever, R5, whatever it is, then we could ask for the appropriate study at that time.
Correct, before you proceed with any ordinance.
Right.
Makes sense.
And the ultimate in the process, no matter what comes through, the ordinance has to be passed by the council. It's not passed by the planning board. That's the process.
Right, so Council, we don't give up our sovereignty in any way by passing this back to the planning board at this
Absolutely
time.
not.
Well, only,
Absolutely
it's,
not.
well, I mean, my only objection would be insofar as if we don't have all the facts, we get this planning board recommendation, and we still don't have all the facts, or we only get part of the facts, partial information, and then we're asked to do a vote on it.
If it- if-
We
You know-
can send it back again if you're not.
To me,
We could if a majority voted for that, but the majority, I don't know.
I agree with, I have to agree with Tom as far as, all it's doing is you're passing it a buck to somebody else to make certain changes. I don't see why they can't have an open forum with us, where we have the meetings that some of the public would like to have, where, we know.
Because
I
what's
thought we
happening?
had that.
Because we would be usurping the planning board's responsibilities. The planning board has certain responsibilities.
No, this is our responsibility.
This is our responsibility here,
ordinances,
but
the ordinances.
the ordinances, but what I'm saying is the planning board has to come up with what recommendations, whether they like them or they don't like them, whatever we're gonna do.
It's supposed to be based on the master plan, which is created by the planning board.
Understood, but they're going to make their recommendations based on, after they've reviewed all these facts?
Yep.
In other words, the
So
environmental
they're gonna do the
study-
studies first and then make the
They're gonna do the studies
recommendation?
first and then make a recommendation, with that knowledge.
I don't know to what degree the board itself will commission these types of studies, so.
Right.
I mean, it,
Typically, can I just say,
Please.
typically when someone comes in to submit plans to the planning board, I'm on there, Eileen is on there, you get those studies. They have to provide traffic studies, they have to provide noise studies, they have to do stormwater runoff studies. All of that is encompassed in their plan. That's submitted to the borough engineer, it comes then before the planning board. If there are issues that the engineer sees in those plans, he goes back to their engineer, probably before they even get to the planning board, and says, you should probably change this, this, and this, because it's not gonna pass muster. They will probably redraft their plan to encompass those issues. But typically, studies are done when they submit their plans. We've had them numerous times.
We don't have a plan yet.
We don't.
But we're not the planning board. The developer submits their plans to the planning board.
But there's no plan, Rich.
No,
That's a problem that we have here.
But that's not accurate to say that, because there was a plan, They withdrew it.
Yeah, but they withdrew it because it didn't meet the qualifications of the zone, so then they come to us and
No,
we're like,
no, that's not correct, Patty. It did meet the qualifications of the zone, as the zone currently
right,
stands.
but I'm sorry, because the public came out and said they didn't want it. You know, there was a lot of people that came out.
No, not at the planning
No.
board, not at that
They
plan.
didn't.
They did not come in.
No, they didn't.
So
It
I
was-
suggest we just vote on it, you know.
Right. I think you need to pass it back to them. Let's see what, they come back
Pass
with.
it back to
But
me.
You can still get, not yet passing anything back to me, but you can still get the information that you need.
And I'd like to put the restrictions on it when we pass it back to them.
Or come back with something else.
We don't want to see this in the area. You know, there's guidelines for them. And then they'll make up their mind, they'll come back to us.
But that you'd like to make it clear that you're not asking them just to review the B3 zone, which is in this ordinance, but to review all the different options that were
That's
set
fine.
forth in Mr. May's initial
There's nothing
letter,
wrong with that.
and make a recommendation back to council, given all the possibilities that,
That's what I,
I mean, I support Jim's restrictions, I just don't like the idea of sending it back to the planning board before this information's been given to us, since it was asked for, 2 weeks ago, right?
but when you perform, and
and it would be,
I don't do a
can
lot of
we
work,
pass it?
honestly, before planning and zoning boards, but when you do a traffic study, isn't that supposed to be geared toward what the intended purpose is?
Yes.
So if we don't know what the purpose is yet, and the planning board is gonna make a recommendation as to whether it should be residential, zone, business, how can they do a traffic study unless we know what potentially is gonna go there?
Listen, I can vote on this right now, no. Because we don't have the information to change the zone and the footprint of our town right now. So, this is, if we wanna get the information here, if the landowner wants to say what your intention, the landowner came to us and requested a change in the zone. So therefore, it would seem reasonable that they have an idea of what they wanna put there.
No,
And
there was,
The landowner didn't
it
come
doesn't
to
make
us.
it doesn't make it sense to me why we have to wait for it to go back to the planning board for them to come back to us. That doesn't.
But the landowner submitted the plans to the planning board. The landowner requested of the planning board a rezoning change. They don't request us. The planning board then recommends a zone to the council, and the council presents an ordinance, and either passes or declines it. So the developer did not come directly to us. The developer went directly to the planning board, which is the process.
right.
But if somebody comes to the planning board, they come to the planning board to ask for a zoning change. There's a reason why they're asking for the zoning change. Let us know what the reason is that you're asking for the zoning change. The planning board, without asking this information, without asking, why do you want this the zone change? What are your intents and purposes of?
How do you know, were you sitting at the meeting, Patty?
What's the intents and purposes of your zone change? Then I don't know. It boggles the mind.
Okay, we get the point, Patty.
Fred, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Fred, how did the ordinance get to us? Was that the recommended zoning from the planning board, the B3? Is that why it came to us in the original?
Yes,
Okay, so they've recommended, so the planning board has actually already recommended the B3?
yes, I don't honestly know how much they considered the other options, though, that were in Mr. May's initial letter.
Okay, all right. So, okay, I understand.
Exactly. So is there any way we can make the recommendation, if we're going to pass this back to the planning board, that they also look into residential zone
Sure.
versus commercial zone?
Sure.
And, not that I definitely don't want to see any apartments going in there or transient housing, but, townhome development, I wouldn't mind. Age restricted, if somebody wants to do age restricted because they don't want the kids, school to be inundated with children, that's something to consider.
Liam, would you like to say something?
There's one point I'd like
Lean
to
has
bring
the
up, is that
Yeah,
there
just
is
if I
a law
may,
that's
just
been
so
passed. Excuse me.
Yeah,
Yes.
just if I may request that anyone utilize the sound system so that we
Okay.
have a clean record, and thank you.
I'm a member of the planning board. just wanted to say, and I know I mentioned it to J.L. a while ago, Fred might remember, a few years ago, New Jersey passed a law that stated that once an application is presented to the planning board or to the town, you cannot change the zoning. This law came about, are you familiar with it, Fred?
Mhm.
Yes, it changed what's called the time of decision rule.
Right. So therefore, if an application comes to the planning board, we then cannot do anything about this zone. This way, we have an opportunity to decide what we, the borough, wants there, not what the developer wants there.
Oh, very good.
So
that's
it's better
why-
to stay in our form rather than going back to the planning.
Well, no, I mean, refer it back to the planning board, and then we could, because we're familiar with what the zoning laws are, but we can have a public hearing before the planning board also.
But the point is that they can present a plan to us, and we can change the zoning. We don't have the requirements
Get
of
out
the
the
planning
planning
board.
board.
No,
Eileen, so in other words, you would be an advocate for having a public meeting for the planning board?
well, the
It's
planning
all- they're
board
always
has
public
a public
meetings.
Well, I mean, it may be
Advertising.
advertised or,
Yeah.
you know,
Right,
They're advertised.
It's
always
advertised,
advertised.
it's an official meeting every month, it's always advertised. But we could certainly make sure.
Well, it's not.
It's not ad- it's advertised.
what I'm saying, but you were also at the last
No,
meeting.
unfortunately, I wasn't, I was away, so I missed it. But I just wanted to bring that point up, because it isn't good when you're saying you want to know what the plan is, you can't really know what the plan is,
Until
and
you
then
decide what the
change
zoning
the
is.
zoning is. You want to take control.
Yeah,
of
that
the
was
zoning.
my
But
plan.
that may be a
Other
requirement
objections.
for the planning board, but it may not be a requirement for the
No,
borough.
That's-
It-
That's a requirement.
Previously, under the municipal land use law, there was what was called the time of decision rule, meaning that if an applicant came forward with a plan that was otherwise conforming to your zoning ordinance, and if upon receipt of it, the municipality hated it and thought it was a terrible thing for the town, that until such time as the planning board actually took a vote on it, the council could change the zoning, and then their plan would no longer be conforming, and they'd have to get a variance. But now the law changed that you don't have until that point to change the zoning. Once they submit their application, you can't pull the rug out from under their feet and change the zoning on it.
Okay, well, then-
So I just wanted you to be aware of that.
It's your
so-
recommendation that it goes back to the planning board?
Right.
And, all right.
Right, but, and mainly it's because it gives us, the borough, the opportunity to define what we want there, as opposed to having a developer come and.
And submit a plan.
We're,
And submit a plan.
you know, we're faced with, we have to fit it into what's existing, and that may not be the most desirable.
You have to design the zone.
Right.
You don't design to the developer. You design the zone and what you want. And the developer designs to you.
Right,
Your
they
requirement.
have to put a plan together that conforms to your standards for what you think
Right,
is
so
best
we
for that
set the
area.
standards.
Right. You set the standard for the area.
I perfectly understand that.
Right, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eileen.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eileen.
All right, so it's a
So that you-
I
recommendation.
feel more comfortable now after Eileen. I thank you very much.
So,
Are you making a recommendation or are you making a motion?
I'm making a motion that we,
to send back to the
that we
planning
take,
board with
send it
these.
back with the following, that we don't want garden supplies, outdoor dining, or hardware stores.
How about the packaged liquor and wine store? Can we get rid of that too?
I didn't hear you.
Packaged liquor and wine store?
We
You
don't need
can't
another one of
because-
those in town.
Can we get
Well,
rid
you
of
can't
those?
because St. Stephen's Green is in this new zoning section, so then that would affect them.
But they would be pre-existing.
They'd be pre-existing condition.
Okay, we could take it out.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Take it out. We don't need another liquor
No.
store.
Well, then take it out.
Yeah, take it out.
But perhaps you want to make it more broad, that the planning board would look at the ordinance that's already drafted with the recommendations set forth by Councilman Schuler, but that they would also take a look at this once
Review the
again
overall use.
overall as to whether a
Review the
different use
overall
might
use.
be.
Yeah.
I would also submit
Better
a
in the health, safety, and welfare of the
recommendation to review
municipality.
the transcript from the meeting that we had with the public too.
Yeah, there should be a transcript of the meeting. Everybody in Plano, especially
Can
regular.
we do that, Jim?
Well, you'd have to send the tape of the meeting to be transcribed, which can take place. We can certainly do that if you'd like to do that. We didn't have a court order there, we'd have to have the tape sent to it transcribed, or
Should behoove them to
print-
know that the public.
print it up in a transcript format and distribute it to the planning board.
I think that it should be, would behoove the planning board to know that the majority of the public was against the B3 zoning.
I want to include the package store and liquor store in that too.
Okay.
On the recommendations we don't have, they will not be allowed.
I'll second Jimmy's motion.
So we're clear on what we're sending over there?
Yeah, so it includes Jimmy's recommendations as well as the transcript
Transcript.
from the, I forget what the date
Public,
was, 2 weeks ago.
yes.
All right, I'm okay with that.
Is there anything more that we want to?
I think you want to also have it, review the overall use,
Right.
whether it would be commercial, residential,
Yeah,
or mixed use.
that's what we said.
Yeah.
It's a mouthful, but I agree.
We need a little levity. Anything else? Do we have a roll call on it, Jeff?
This is on the motion to refer the matter to the planning board with the specific recommendations to remove packaged goods, hardware store, outdoor dining, garden supplies, and to review the overall uses as outlined in the engineer's report. Mrs. Cindy?
That's a mouthful.
Too, right? Are we dealing with transcript in that too?
If I may, we should probably address the transcript separately.
Okay.
We'll prepare that and provide it to the board.
Automatic, I'll do it, okay.
Package store include bars?
Yes.
I think that's already on a, let's just check. I thought that was on a, does package store include bar?
Jimmy, what does it say there about package?
That's only a package.
Package and
It's
wine
like a store, it doesn't say bar.
That could be.
It doesn't say a bar.
Packaged liquor and wine store.
So conceivably, I guess it could.
On-site consumption of alcoholic beverages, I would say, would be a different category than
Right.
packaged
I think so,
goods.
too.
Is, you
Okay.
go and you buy some wine and you take it with you.
All right.
Bars and restaurants, nightclubs, there's probably some language to that effect in the permitted uses. I don't have the ordinance in front of me, but
And if I'm not mistaken, I don't believe restaurants are it does reference eating places, sit down only, and specifically prohibits fast food restaurants.
Right.
Yeah.
Again, on that motion, and Mrs. Cynthia? On the vote? Mr. Diver?
Yes.
Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin?
Yes.
Mr. Vorbach?
Yes.
Thank you. Do we have any reports? Mr. Kincaid?
No reports, no reports at this time.
Thank you. Tom? Patty? Sarah?
No.
Yes, at the next meeting, we will probably be bringing forth for introduction the initial budget for the coming year. We're still waiting on a few figures related to Hurricane Sandy from FEMA. We have gotten some feedback, but we'll be able to finalize something probably more in the next couple of weeks, and we'll introduce probably at the next meeting, and then we'll need to set a public hearing for that as well, a special meeting for that. And that's it.
Thank you. Kim?
No, nothing.
Thank you very much. New business, we have ordinance introduction, ordinance number 2013-1. This has to do with our changing the granting of the license.
Yes, Mayor, this is entitled an ordinance delegating the authority to approve the granting of raffle and bingo licenses to the borough clerk. We had discussion at this at a previous meeting. Formal action was deferred from our last meeting because of we had a special matter to deal with.
We need a motion and a second.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Any questions on this? Roll call, Jeff.
Mrs. Cynthia?
Yes.
Mr. Diver?
Yes.
Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin?
Yes.
Mr. Vorbach?
Yes.
Thank you. New business resolutions. This is Resolution R 2013-44, make an adjustment to a water facility utility account. Need a motion and a second?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Cynthia?
Yes.
Mr. Diver?
Yes.
Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin?
Yes.
Mr. Vorbach?
Yes.
Thank you. Resolution R 2013-45, approving Steve Hudson and Tucker Brendel as members for the Independent Fire Company Number 1.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Any questions? Roll call, please, Jay.
Mrs. India?
Yes.
Mr. Diver?
Yes.
Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin?
Yes.
Mr. Vorbach?
Yes.
Thank you. Resolution R 2013-46, authorizing contract for the professional service to Holman, Freenya, and Allison, provide the audit service.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
On point number 4, the award of this contract for professional services is entered into without competitive bidding. What's the rationale behind that?
It has been the borough's practice to perform what's referred to as the alternate method we don't go to formal bids or solicit quotations, but we do a request for qualifications from individuals. It is my understanding that a process was undertaken some years ago, and since that time, I guess there is it's not done on an annual basis, but rather on a sporadic basis to actually solicit quotations.
All right, so this is just a long-standing practice of the town.
Well, for some years, I don't know how long it's been since the borough has actually solicited formal quotations. But in the past, we have requested proposals, but they are not awarded as bid items per se.
Did you talk to several companies?
Well, we make the availability, we don't specifically solicit quotes. We advise the public that we are accepting quotations, or, I'm sorry, I shouldn't use the word quotation. We are accepting proposals. And we did that earlier this year, and as has been indicated, this is a change in the organization. I believe the background.
Yeah, I understood that.
Thank
No
you.
more questions from me.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Roll call, please.
Mrs. India?
Yes.
Mr. Diver?
Yes.
Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin?
Yes.
Mr. Vorbach?
No.
Resolution R 2013-47, consenting to a proposed water quality management plan. Need a motion and a second.
Make that motion.
I'll second it.
Any questions? Roll call, Jay.
Mrs. India?
Yes.
Mr. Diver?
Yes.
Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin?
Yes.
Mr. Vorbach?
Yes.
Resolution R 2013-48, authorizing consent to proposed modification to the telecommunication facility on Old Mill Road.
And Mayor, just to follow up, you may recall that there was some discussion in our last meeting regarding the authorization for a different company, Sprint Spectrum, to actually submit the application to the planning board. You will also recall that earlier this year, we authorized this entity to submit the application to the planning board. That application has been submitted, reviewed, and approved by the planning board, and this is the next part of the approval, which is the borough's consent as the owner to authorize the work to actually be done.
Is this the one we talked about with the height?
Specifically, it was the other one that had the
Okay.
height issue, although frankly, these are all on the same tank at Old Mill Road, and it's the same issues, although and as has been indicated, both the planning board reviewed this at the recent meeting and has approved the application. Additionally, the borough engineer has approved the replacement of these antennas and the addition of what I'll call the ground equipment that's associated with those antennas.
There's no mention in here that there's no height increase, though.
That's correct. Although that was not part of our original approval, nor was it specifically part of the planning board's approval, although the plans indicated that they are simply changing out the existing antennas and putting, I believe the terminology is new antenna mounts and antennas, but they are all at the same location at the top of the tower.
Location, but are they the same height? It says, there's nothing that specifies if it, I would like, can we do that? If we can't, that's fine, I just don't know.
I don't know on this one if we can at this juncture. Again, we are the owner of the property. I did not review that specific question with the engineer. If I may just refer to the engineer's review.
I've already read it. It doesn't say anything.
Yes, it is not specifically addressed. Again, I'm not privy to what transpired before the planning board as part of this application, but I don't believe there were any height issues.
Right? You're a planning board representative. Could you tell us what the height, if there's a change in height?
If that was asked.
Again, it wasn't about changing the height, it was about changing the equipment. The height has not changed, we are still mounting the antenna on the same location on the tower. So in other words, the height of that location has not changed.
Okay, so can we put something in here that specifies that the height is not?
Again, I think I would refer back to the last meeting. My concern with doing that is, again, you're going from 3G service to 4G service. There may be a slight modification, the actual antenna itself. And to put a requirement on that could prevent, this situation. So why would we do that?
It appears that there's a reference in paragraph 1 after the now therefore clause that references as detailed on the construction drawings prepared by, and it gives Tectonic. If you would like to review those plans, council, I'm sure that they're available here in Borough Hall, and I'm sure they show the proposed new antennas and elevations and whatnot. And you could...
Do you want to make a motion to table this until we have a chance to review it?
If that's the council's preference, that's not a problem.
Anybody care about doing that, to review the plans to see if there's a height increase? I mean, that's an environmental concern, isn't it?
I'm just looking at this.
I mean, is there a way to get that information before we have to vote on it? Only because I know this has come up, this one came up before I was actually on the council. I'd like a little more information on. This is the first time I'm seeing this one here. The other one we talked about.
I'm sure that Mr. Delaney and Mr. May could make those plans available here at Borough Hall to any council member who'd like to take a look at the specs with regard to the antennas that now have been approved by the planning board. But if you feel reluctant to give your consent until you've had an opportunity to verify
Now, are these the antennas that are at the top of? I know there's different rings. Are these the top ones?
I don't personally know the answer to that. I'm sure that's referenced in the drawings.
AT&T is the highest.
AT&T's the highest.
So this would then...
So are these below AT&T?
Below AT&T, that's correct.
Okay.
These are the AT&T.
And AT&T,
Yeah.
So if,
well, new singular wireless AT&T. That is, AT&T has the top ring around the water tower. The rest are below them.
So this could be
as high as it wanted to be. I mean, before we voted,
Yeah, as high as
we
what?
voted and said nothing can be higher than AT&T.
Only because I wasn't here
Never
when
voted
this
on the
came up.
AT&T, and nothing in here says that there's
A height restriction, there's no
Well,
height
know that
restriction.
your planning board has already reviewed and approved this, but if council, it's up to you as to whether you want to review this further. But it has already been vetted and approved by the planning board, so. And I'm sure that height was part of their review.
It doesn't sound like any question was asked
I
about
guess,
that.
Well, it's a resolution, it's not minutes.
Do you want to review the plans before we go ahead?
I made a motion, no,
I don't think anybody seconded.
What was your motion, Ms. Secretary? Repeat?
I made a motion to table until we could review plans.
Yeah, I'll second that.
But just in the future, is it possible to get these specifications
Before?
just put on the, that's all.
Absolutely.
What I don't understand here is, this is why we have a planning board. And the planning board makes recommendations to go forward on these different matters. And if we're gonna now start to question every single little thing that comes from the planning board, this is kind of standard. Anytime you have a telecommunications company that's gonna upgrade their service, they are just gonna take the same spot that they've had, and they're just going to gig it up a little bit and put it in the new perspective that it's supposed to be for service. And I don't see, we know AT&T has the top position. Anything else is going to come below that in the same location that they've been in. There's nothing environmental here. There's nothing about how high it's going to be in conjunction with AT&T being the top rung. I think that we're taking a lot of decisions away from our planning board and not going by their recommendations. The zoning thing is one issue, but this, to me, I certainly would, go along with what our planning board has recommended.
There's a reason why we vote on things. There's a reason why there's checks and balances. If the planning board is going to be a board all on its own and not have to answer to the town, then this would not be in front of us. My point the last time when we had the same issue was the fact that I was concerned, I voted no. I mean, it passed, I voted no. I was concerned about the fact that it didn't reference height. I brought up the fact that Belmar had a problem where they did an antenna that wanted to do an antenna that was 500 feet high or something like that. But, we need to ask questions. And we have a duty to the public to make certain that when something comes in front of us, we're okay with it. Asking for just to say, okay, I just want something in here that says it's not going to be any higher than it currently is,
And there's a problem with that.
There's a motion and a second on the floor.
To the table, yes. Any questions on that?
The motion is to table.
Until we get the height.
to review the plans.
Any questions on that? A roll call, Jay?
Mrs. Cynthia?
Yes.
Mr. Diver?
Abstain.
Mrs. King?
No.
Mr. Schuler?
No.
Mr. Tinkin?
Yes.
Mr. Vorbach?
Yes.
That's 3 votes to table, 2 opposed, and 1 abstention.
Passes. So
We'll provide that additional information for the next meeting.
Thank you very much, Jay.
This hasn't anything to do with the height or anything, Fred, but isn't there some state statute where if a telecommunication comes forth to a borough, for any type of tower or communications, that we have no legal right to deny that?
you're constrained in what you can reject, because it's supposed to be all in furtherance of the public good, and the provision of cellular communication capacity is considered to be a beneficial use that furthers the public good. So you're constrained in your ability to deny these types of towers. So
We're not denying, we just wanted the
Absolutely
proper
not.
information.
Excuse me, that was my question, and, all right, I just wanted a clarification, that's all. Had nothing to do with members on the council.
Okay.
Thank you, Fred.
So hopefully by the next meeting, this information will be made available to all council members, and you'll be able to vote on it at the next council meeting.
Thank you. Financial resolutions. Resolution R 2013-49, authorizing additional temporary budget appropriations for 2013 budget.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Any questions? Roll call, Jim.
Mrs. Cynthia?
Yes.
Mr. Diver?
Yes.
Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin?
Yes.
Mr. Vorbach?
Yes.
Thank you. A motion to move bills to the Finance Committee.
Make that motion.
I'll second.
Any questions? Roll call, Jim.
Mrs. Cynthia?
Yes.
Mr. Diver?
Yes.
Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin?
Yes.
Mr. Vorbach?
Yes.
Thank you. Resolution R 2013-50, approving payments on claims for the March 22nd bill list.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Any questions? Roll call.
Mrs. Cynthia?
Yes.
Mr. Diver?
Yes.
Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin?
Yes.
Mr. Vorbach?
Yes.
Thank you. Consent resolution R 2013-51, these are raffle license.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Any questions? Roll call, Jeff.
Mrs. Cynthia?
Yes.
Mr. Diver?
Abstain.
Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin?
Yes.
Mr. Vorbach?
Yes.
Thank you. At this point, we have the second voice of the public. You may speak on any item you like. Step forward, give your name and address.
Eileen Brown,
Silver Pond Road. I just wanted to let you know that on Saturday, we had a big cleanup over at Shore Road that was sponsored by the Rec Pond Brook Stormwater Management Group and AmeriCorps and Clean Ocean Action and the State DEP. Got a lot of, I don't know if you've driven by, but we got about half a Spring Lake boardwalk out. There's still a lot, about 10 huge pieces of wood and docks and railings and everything else.
Art picked all that stuff up there.
Oh, did you? That's what I got.
Something's not there.
So I just want to let you know that there's a lot of stuff in there.
Well, thank you for doing it.
Thank you, Eileen.
Oh, and we did have
And I apologize for not being there. I knucklehead I am, I forgot all that.
Thanks, Eileen.
Anyone else like to speak? Seeing no hands, need a motion to close the second voice of the public?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
I need a motion to adjourn at this time.
I'll make
Mayor.
that motion.
Did they do the minutes?
Second.
No, we distribute those.
But, and also, the question about the transcript, is providing the transcript of the last hearing and the rezoning to the planning board, is there any further action that we need to undertake this evening on that?
No, at this point, I wanted to obtain the quote and advise the council what the cost would be before we proceed.
Okay. Do we get a second? I'm sorry.
Yes, we did.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.